My mom died when I was 13. After that, it was just me and my dad. And for a while, I thought that's all I needed. We didn't talk about it much. Her death. The way it changed the air in the house. The way every room felt half full, like she'd just stepped out for a second and would be back any minute. But she never came back. And I didn't know how to live in a world where she didn't exist anymore. Grief, for me, wasn't loud. It was quiet. Heavy. Like trying to move through water. I didn't cry much, and I didn't open up to anyone, not even my dad. But inside, I was stuck, completely, helplessly stuck, in a life that didn't make sense anymore. For the first few months, I don't even think I registered what had happened. I went to school. I came home. I barely spoke. I'd sit in my room for hours just staring at the ceiling. Nothing mattered. Not my grades. Not my friends. Not the future. Because the person who'd been my whole world was gone. Just like that. My dad did his best. He was in his 30s, still young, but something about him aged after she died. His face got more tired, his eyes darker, his posture heavier. But he kept going. He kept working, kept cooking, kept trying to smile for me, even when I knew it was fake. He never brought anyone around. Never hinted at dating. He was fully focused on me. I think he was grieving the same way I was, silently. He didn't push me to talk, and I didn't ask him to explain anything. We just survived. Together. And in a strange, broken way that made me feel safe. It was just us. Father and son. Two people holding onto each other after the world fell apart. I built a wall in my mind. I told myself that this, just the two of us, was the new version of life. No one else could understand what we'd been through. No one else should be allowed into it. This pain, this bond, this new version of family, it was sacred. But I was 13. And time doesn't stop just because your world does. It was about a year after she passed. I came home from school, threw my backpack on the floor, opened the fridge, and heard my dad call from the living room. He told me to sit down. Said he had something important to tell me. His voice was calm. Careful. That kind of serious tone parents use when they're either about to break bad news or ask you to do something you really don't want to do. I sat. He cleared his throat, fidgeted a bit, then said there was someone he wanted me to meet. I didn't say anything. I just stared. He went on. Said her name was Catherine. That she was kind. Thoughtful. That they'd been seeing each other for a few months. And she had a young son, Austin. He was 8. I remember feeling like I had left my body. Like my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. It felt like my dad was reading lines from someone else's life. I still didn't say anything. Then he said it. Just like that. They're going to move in with us. I blinked. I looked at him. And I felt this wave of something I couldn't even name. Disbelief, betrayal, anger, confusion, all crashing over me at once. Move in? With us? Into our house? The one my mom had picked the curtains for? The one where her laughter still echoed in the hallways if I let myself hear it? My dad kept talking, trying to explain how it would work. That I didn't have to change anything. That we'd take it slow. That this didn't mean he loved Mom any less. But I wasn't listening. All I could think was, he replaced her. I didn't know Catherine. I didn't know Austin. But I hated them already. Not because they were bad people. Not because they'd done anything to me. But because they weren't her. Because the only thing keeping our broken world together, just the two of us, was about to be shattered by strangers. I felt betrayed. Like everything we'd been through meant nothing. Like he was choosing a new family, and I was being forced to smile and accept it. I left the room without saying a word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just went to my room, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall. And that's where I stayed for hours. After my dad told me they were moving in, everything inside me went quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just shut down. I don't think I spoke to him for 3 straight days after that. Not a word. I couldn't. Every time I looked at him, all I saw was betrayal. And then, they came. Catherine moved in with her son, Austin. They brought boxes, framed photos, books, kitchen stuff. It was like watching someone slowly erase my mother's presence with every item they unpacked. Of course, that wasn't true. But it felt true. And at 13, your feelings are facts. Catherine was nice. That made it worse. If she'd been rude or fake, maybe I could have justified the hate I was nursing in my chest. But she was warm, gentle. She'd try to talk to me without forcing anything. She remembered little things my dad told her, like what kind of cereal I liked, what movies I watched when I was sick as a kid. She made my favorite meal one night, set it on the table like it was some kind of peace offering. I didn't touch it. I stared at it like it had been poisoned. Austin, he was a different kind of problem. He was 8 years old, full of energy, and thought I was the coolest human being on earth, which honestly made me hate him a little more. He'd knock on my door, follow me around the house, ask what video games I played, peek at my homework like it was written in code he needed to crack. And I ignored him. I ignored both of them. I stopped coming to dinner. I ate in my room, or not at all. If Catherine spoke to me, I kept my answers short. Cold. My entire body was in defense mode. But when they weren't looking, I watched. I watched Catherine with my dad, how she smiled at him when he was talking, how he looked lighter when she laughed. And I hated that too. Because I was scared. Scared that she'd take him away from me. That whatever bond we'd built after losing Mom would fade into this new life, this new family, that I never asked for. I started spending more time outside. Sometimes I'd leave the house without saying where I was going. I'd walk around the neighborhood for hours, past the old school, past the ice cream shop Mom used to take me to, past the flower shop where she bought the same cheap bouquet every Sunday just because. And sometimes I went to the cemetery. I'd sit by her grave in silence. I didn't cry. I wasn't capable of that yet. I just sat and thought. And in my mind, I'd apologize. I'd tell her I was sorry, that I was trying to keep us, me and Dad, together, that I didn't understand why he had to bring someone else into our world. I thought if I visited her enough, if I stayed close enough to her memory, maybe it would stop the changes from happening at home. But change doesn't care about grief. It just keeps coming. My grades started slipping. Not dramatically, but enough for my teachers to call home. I'd sit in class, tuned out, doodling in the margins of my notebook. I stopped turning in essays. I stopped practicing guitar. I stopped caring. And my dad noticed. One night, after I skipped another dinner, he came into my room. He didn't sit down. He just stood in the doorway and said, "You know, I'll never forget her. Your mom. She's part of everything I am." I didn't respond. He added, "Catherine's not here to replace her. She never could." I still said nothing. I stared at the floor like it was going to open up and swallow me whole. He sighed, quietly, like a man carrying weight he couldn't set down. Then he left. I heard Catherine's voice in the hallway a minute later. Soft. Concerned. I didn't hear what he said back. But I remember lying there that night, staring at the ceiling, wishing everything would just freeze. That we could all stop pretending. That I didn't have to choose between loving my mom and accepting this new life. Because back then, it felt like one canceled out the other. And I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. There's something about holidays that makes everything feel worse when your life is broken. It's like the whole world is celebrating while you're just pretending not to fall apart. The first big holiday after they moved in was Thanksgiving. Catherine suggested a small dinner at home, just us. She offered to cook, said it might help us all feel a little more together. She even invited me to help, said I could be in charge of the mashed potatoes or the playlist or literally anything I wanted. I didn't answer. I stayed in my room and pretended I didn't hear her. When the day came, the house smelled like cinnamon and roasted garlic and all the things that usually made it feel like home. But this time it didn't. It felt like someone had taken everything that was familiar and replaced it with a cheap imitation. The table was set. There were candles. Catherine was wearing an apron and smiling nervously. Austin was dressed in this little sweater, best like he was trying out for a Hallmark movie. My dad looked hopeful, and I ruined it. I came to the table, looked at all of them, and said I wasn't hungry. Then I knocked over the chair on my way out. I went outside and sat on the curb for an hour while my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at the screen. I just stared into the dark and felt like I was floating outside of everything that used to matter. Christmas was worse. Catherine tried even harder that time. There were lights, stockings, gifts with little handwritten tags. She bought me a book she knew I liked, the exact edition with the textured cover I once mentioned offhand. She put it under the tree with a note that said, "I hope one day you let me be part of your world." I didn't even open it. I left the house that morning and didn't come back until nightfall. No calls, no texts. My dad was furious when I walked in, but he didn't yell. He just looked tired. Tired in a way I'd never seen before. Austin looked like he'd been crying. And Catherine, she looked like someone who wanted to be invisible. There were so many of those moments. So many small ways I pushed back. On Austin's birthday, I promised to help set up decorations and then disappeared for most of the afternoon. He waited for me before opening his presents. I didn't show up. On my dad's birthday, I stayed in my room the entire evening while they sang songs and cut cake in the kitchen. I heard them laughing, and every sound made me feel like I was being erased. And through all of it, every ruined dinner, every cold shoulder, every storm I brought into that house, Catherine stayed kind. She never snapped. She never stopped trying. And Austin was relentless. He kept knocking on my door, kept asking to play, kept telling me about his day like we were best friends, and I just hadn't realized it yet. He didn't get tired of me ignoring him. He didn't stop thinking I was someone worth following. And I hated that about him, because part of me wanted to give in. Part of me wanted to accept that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the enemy. But I was still too angry, too broken. One night, a few weeks after Christmas, my dad sat me down. He told me, again, that Catherine wasn't replacing anyone, that she understood I was hurting, that I didn't have to love her, but that I needed to stop punishing everyone around me for my pain. I stared at him like he'd just asked me to set myself on fire. He didn't get it. He didn't understand what it felt like to watch someone else fill the seat at the dinner table where Mom used to sit, to see laughter in the house that had only recently known silence. I told him something that night that I'll never forget. I said, "This will never be a real family. Not to me." And I meant it. I wanted him to feel it, to know how deeply I believed it. And for the first time, he didn't try to convince me otherwise. He just nodded, stood up, and left me alone. It was early spring when he asked me to go for a walk with him. Just the two of us, like we used to do before the world changed. Before Catherine, before Austin. I almost said no, but something in his voice made me pause. It was softer than usual, maybe even a little nervous. So I shrugged, put on a hoodie, and followed him out the door. We didn't say much at first, just walked. The park was quiet, birds, wind, trees still half naked from winter. It should have been peaceful, but inside, I was tense. I knew something was coming. He started with small talk, asked how school was going. I mumbled something vague. Then he slowed down, took a deep breath, and said he wanted to talk to me about something important. I remember every word. He said he'd been thinking about the future, about what it meant to grow, not just as individuals, but as a family. He said we'd all been through so much, and maybe it was time to look ahead. I felt my stomach tighten. Then he said it, that he and Catherine had talked about having a child together. Not that they were. Not that she was pregnant. Just that they talked about it. And that maybe it could be a way for all of us to come together. To start something new. Something shared. My body went cold. I stopped walking. Just froze. He turned to face me, and the look on his face wasn't smug or proud. It was careful. Like he knew he was holding something fragile and didn't want to break it. But I was already breaking. My mind couldn't handle it. A child? With her. A new family. What did that make me? The leftover from the old one? The first draft of a life he didn't want anymore? I felt my heart pounding in my chest. My fist clenched before I even realized it. And then I exploded. I told him it was betrayal. That he was betraying Mom. That he was spitting on everything we'd been through, on everything she meant to us. I asked him if she meant nothing now. If Catherine was so perfect that he could just build a new life and forget the one he lost. I accused him of trying to erase her. Of erasing me. I said I wouldn't be part of it. I said if they had a baby, they could raise it without me. That I'd leave. I'd move in with Mom's sister. That I'd disappear and they'd never hear from me again. And I was crying. Full on, ugly, public sobbing. People were staring. Joggers. Dog walkers. A couple pushing a stroller. I didn't care. I was falling apart. I yelled, "It's me or her." I actually said that. Like I was giving my dad some kind of twisted ultimatum. Like love could be measured in choices and conditions. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just stood there, looking at me. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I wasn't ready for. Not anger. Not disappointment. Pain. Deep, quiet pain. Like something inside him had been slowly cracking for months, and I just finally broken it. I turned and stormed off. Didn't wait for him. Didn't check if he was following. By the time I got home, I locked myself in my room. Didn't come out for hours. Dinner time came. I stayed in bed. Eventually, I heard Catherine calling softly through the door. She said dinner was ready. I ignored her, but I could feel the pressure building. The silence outside my door wasn't just quiet, it was loaded. And I knew something had shifted, that I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I stayed in my room the rest of that night. Didn't come out. Didn't eat. Didn't speak. The things I had said at the park kept echoing in my head, but I didn't feel guilty yet. I felt raw, shaken, still furious, still convinced I was right. I had drawn a line in the sand, me or her. And I was waiting for my dad to choose. Eventually, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then a soft knock on the door. It was Catherine. Her voice was quiet. She said, "Dinner's ready." She said she made something I liked. And then, she asked something simple. "Is there anything I can do to help you smile? Even just a little tonight?" Something in me snapped. I flew out of my room and marched into the kitchen. Sat down at the table across from them. And with every ounce of bitterness I had, I slammed my fists on the table and said, "I don't need anything from you." I told her to stop pretending to be someone she wasn't. Told her to stop playing saint just to win my dad over. Told her to take her son and get out of our house. Told her to leave us alone, that we were the real family. The words came out like venom. I didn't hold back. I didn't stop to think what any of it meant. And then it was silent. Completely silent. Catherine stared at me, her eyes wide, filling with tears, her face pale. She didn't say anything. My dad was sitting at the other end of the table, looking at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes before. It wasn't pain. It wasn't sadness. It was cold. Empty. Sharp. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to reason with me. He just said, "Go to your room." And that was it. No lecture. No explanation. Just that one sentence, said like a verdict. I got up slowly, left the table, walked back to my room. But the silence was deafening. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I'd won anything. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I came out expecting to see them. Catherine in the kitchen, Austin watching cartoons, my dad reading the news like he always did. But they weren't there. The car was gone. At first, I thought maybe they'd just gone out. Grocery shopping, something like that. But they didn't come back by lunch. Or dinner. It was just me and my dad. And even then, it barely felt like us. We didn't talk. We didn't even make eye contact. And for a moment, one dark, quiet moment, I actually believed I'd gotten what I wanted. That Catherine had left. That it was just me and him again. And I didn't know how to feel. Relieved? Victorious? But the only thing I did feel was emptiness. Because the house, once again, felt like it had after Mom died. Hollow. Silent. Unbearably still. The next morning, they came back. But something was different. Catherine looked drained. Her face was pale. Her eyes red. She moved slowly, like she hadn't slept. My dad never left her side. He helped her up the stairs, gently, like she was fragile. Like she might break if he let go for even a second. She didn't look at me. No one said anything to me. Not a word. Not that day. Not the next. Not for weeks. I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't know where they'd gone to, or why she looked like she'd lost something. But even at that age, I knew. Something had changed. And this time, it wasn't just about me. After that night, the night I told Catherine to leave and my dad told me to go to my room, something shifted. But not in the way I expected. I thought maybe things would go back to how they were before. That we'd argue, blow up, then eventually someone would reach out and try again. Maybe Catherine would offer an apology. Maybe I would pretend to accept it. But none of that happened. She stopped trying. No more gentle knocks at my door. No more cheerful offers to cook for me or include me in family things. No more awkward attempts at bonding. Just distance. She didn't ignore me, but she stopped pursuing me. And I noticed it. It was quiet at first, like the absence of background noise you didn't even realize was there until it disappears. Catherine and my dad had become their own quiet rhythm. Morning coffee together, whispered conversations in the kitchen, shared glances over dinner. I wasn't part of that rhythm anymore. I wasn't even near it. I would come to dinner late, eat fast, leave early. Sometimes I'd hear laughter from the living room. The kind of real, full laughter that doesn't ask permission. And I wouldn't know what the joke was. I stopped being invited to movie nights. Or Sunday outings. They stopped assuming I'd want to come. They started asking, then stopped asking. And suddenly, I was a guest in my own home. And it hit me harder than I thought it would. Because for all the fighting, all the bitterness and cold shoulders, there had still been a bridge. There had still been attempts. But now it was just me. I thought I wanted that. I thought I wanted things to go back to just me and Dad. But this wasn't that. This was him with them. And me alone. Austin still tried. The kid never gave up. He'd still knock on my door sometimes, just to say hi. Still tried to get me to play video games, or check out the bug he found in the backyard. He never took it personally when I brushed him off. Never got angry. He just kept trying. Like he didn't believe I could actually hate him. And maybe that's what kept me from fully pushing him away. Some nights, I'd hear him giggling with my dad down the hall. They'd be watching cartoons or building Lego sets. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I'd feel it. The ache. The ache of not belonging. Of watching life happen without you. Of realizing you've been so busy shutting the world out that now the door's locked from the other side. I still didn't admit it out loud. Not even to myself. But I missed them. I missed being part of something. And most of all, I missed him. My dad. He used to be mine. Now he was Austin's. Now he was Catherine's. And I didn't know how to fix it. Because I had spent the last year making sure none of this could work. And now that it was working, just not for me, I didn't know what to do. IIT was a regular Tuesday night. The kind that used to pass unnoticed. No holidays, no tension in the air, just the usual hum of electronics and the dull comfort of pretending not to care about anything. I was in my room, halfway through a game, lost in a screen that had become more home than the house around me. And then, like so many nights before, there was a knock. Austin. He came in without waiting, eyes wandering across the room like it was a secret map. He didn't say anything hurtful or ask permission in a demanding way. He was just curious. Naturally, endlessly curious, like always. He walked through my space with this quiet awe, touching nothing, asking about everything. The games, the books, the drawings, the photos. I gave half-hearted answers, irritated at first, but not enough to kick him out. Then he noticed a photo on my desk, one I hadn't looked at closely in a long time. It was from a different life. Me, my mom, and my dad, standing in front of our home right after we moved in. We were smiling in that photo like the future was guaranteed. That moment felt like it belonged to someone else. But for some reason, I started talking. Not yelling, not bitter, just talking. I told him about that day, how excited we all were, how my mom had insisted on planting flowers she knew wouldn't last the season, how everything felt light back then. Then I told him about what came after, the diagnosis. The slow unraveling of the world I knew. How my dad had poured every moment of his life into staying by her side. How when she was gone, it felt like something essential had been stolen from both of us. And as I said it, I realized something strange. I hadn't spoken these things aloud to anyone. Not to my dad, not to Catherine, not even to myself. But there I was, letting the memories roll out of me like dust from an old attic box I'd refused to open. I looked at the photo again and felt the weight of it in a new way. The innocence, the hope, the unspoken belief that life would keep moving forward in a straight line. Austin didn't respond the way I expected. He didn't flinch or interrupt. He didn't offer empty words. He just listened, really listened. And somehow, that did something to me. His presence, simple, accepting, patient, made the memories feel lighter. Like I wasn't holding them alone anymore. And that's when a thought struck me. Something had been nagging at the edges of my mind since Catherine left that night after I'd said all those horrible things. Something no one had explained. I remembered she'd been gone the whole next day. Not just hiding in a room. Gone. And suddenly, I needed to know. I needed to know where she'd gone. The answer was simple. But it hit hard. The hospital. That one word was enough to snap open a flood of memories I hadn't allowed myself to revisit. Flashes of white hospital lights. The sound of machines. The beeping that lived in the silence after my mom's last breath. I hadn't let myself go back there in a long time. But now it all came rushing in, tangled with something new. A question. One I couldn't answer on my own. Something had happened that night. Something bigger than hurt feelings and slammed doors. And I had to find out what it was. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the photo on my chest, my thoughts spinning in ways they hadn't for months. Austin's words wouldn't leave me alone. She went to the hospital. Your dad still talks about her with love. Those two ideas kept colliding in my head. Why the hospital? What had happened that night? The night after I said those awful things. What had I done? I thought back to the look on Catherine's face before she left. The silence. The tears. I thought about how my dad wouldn't meet my eyes for days after. And I started to feel something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Fear. Not anger. Not grief. Just this hollow, echoing fear that maybe I'd done something I couldn't undo. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat breakfast. I just waited until my dad was alone in the kitchen the next morning, pouring coffee in that same mug he always used, the one Mom had given him that said, "World's okayest dad." And I asked, where did Catherine go that night? He froze. Didn't look at me. Didn't answer. Just put the mug down and said, "Let's go for a walk." Something about the way he said it, calm, steady, but almost tired, made me nod without thinking. We walked to the same park. Same path. Same early spring air, still not sure whether it wanted to be cold or warm. At first, we didn't talk. Just the crunch of gravel under our feet. Then he started to speak. Not about Catherine. About Mom. It caught me off guard. How natural it felt. Like he'd been waiting for me to ask. He told me how they met. At a bookstore, both reaching for the same novel. He told me how she made fun of his shoes on their first date, and how he knew right then she was going to change his whole life. He told me how nervous he was when he proposed. How she laughed, cried, and said yes before he even finished asking. I had never heard any of this before. He talked about the day they found out she was pregnant. How they danced in the kitchen with leftover spaghetti still on the stove. He talked about how she decorated the nursery, how she cried the first time I said Dada, how proud she was when I started reading early. He talked like she was still right there. Like if he reached out, she'd be walking beside us. And I just listened. For once, I didn't interrupt, didn't pull away, because in that moment, I realized something huge. He hadn't forgotten her. Not even close. He still carried her with him. Every day, every decision, every smile. And maybe that was why he could love again. Because he never stopped loving her. Love doesn't run out. It doesn't expire. It just grows in new directions. And somehow, my heart started to hurt in a way that wasn't just pain anymore. It was something closer to understanding. We stopped at a bench. Saturday. For a few minutes, we said nothing. Then I turned to him, and I asked quietly, what happened with Catherine that night? He didn't answer right away. He looked at me, really looked, like he was searching my face for signs of the boy I used to be, the son he remembered, the one who'd once been small enough to carry on his shoulders. And then, he told me. We sat together on that bench in the park, the same one we used to rest on when I was small, legs too short to keep up with my dad's stride. But this time, we weren't catching our breath from walking. We were pausing for something heavier. There was a moment where I felt everything around us go still. And then, without drama or hesitation, he told me the truth. Catherine had been pregnant. He didn't frame it with build-up or soften it with disclaimers. The words came with weight, but not with blame. He told me the timing wasn't theoretical, that their conversation about a baby hadn't been about someday. It was already happening. She had found out just a couple of days before everything fell apart. They were scared, unsure, but hopeful. It wasn't about starting over or replacing anyone. It was about healing, about building something new, not to cover the past, but to live alongside it. Then he told me about that night, the one I shattered, the one where I screamed and threatened and drew my line in the sand. He said after that, after seeing how deep my pain still ran, how firmly I rejected even the idea of something new, they realized I wasn't ready. Not even close. He told me Catherine loved him deeply. And even more, she cared about me. Enough that she couldn't go forward with something that might deepen my hurt, isolate me further, or force something upon a heart that wasn't open yet. So, together, they made a decision. They let it go. They let her go. Not because they wanted to, but because they thought I needed them to. It felt like I'd been standing in the ocean and suddenly realized I couldn't touch the bottom anymore. The ground beneath me was gone, and I was just floating, drowning in silence and regret. Until that moment, I had never fully understood the weight of my own words. I had always believed I didn't matter in the decisions being made, that I was just some angry kid trying to be heard in a house that had stopped listening. But now I saw the truth. My voice had power. And in that power, I had unknowingly asked for something that cost more than I ever imagined. The guilt hit like a wave. Not the loud kind, but the kind that rolls in slow and cold and leaves your skin aching. I wanted to rewind everything. To go back and speak differently, listen harder, see more clearly. But there was no way back, only through. My dad didn't try to comfort me with easy words. He didn't shift the blame or sugarcoat what happened. But in his silence, there was something else, understanding. He didn't hold it against me. He didn't look at me with resentment. He looked at me like a father who knew that grief can twist even the most well-meaning hearts into knots. And he sat with me, quietly, solidly, like he had always done, even when I didn't see it. We walked home from the park in silence. The weight of the truth sat between us, not as a wall anymore, but as something we both carried together. My chest was heavy, but not the same kind of heavy it used to be. This wasn't rage. This wasn't defiance. This was sorrow, softened by understanding. When we got to the house, everything felt strangely warm. Through the windows, the late sun spilled gold onto the floor. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the hallway, soft, familiar, almost like a memory of home I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. In the kitchen, Catherine stood by the oven, and Austin was setting the table with quiet care. They turned when we entered. There was no surprise on their faces, just waiting, just watching. Something in me moved before I could think. My legs carried me forward, through the tension, into the space I'd pushed myself out of for so long. And then, without defense or pride, I apologized, not in words that echoed off walls, but in the silence of posture, presence, and eyes that finally met theirs. It wasn't just for what I'd done. It was for everything I hadn't done. For the closed doors. For the heavy silences. For the anger that I let define me. And in that quiet moment, something happened. Catherine stepped forward and embraced me. Not like someone forgiving a stranger, but like someone welcoming back a lost part of her family. We both cried. The kind of crying that doesn't need sound. That just happens when a part of you lets go. After that, things didn't snap into place like in a movie. They grew, slow and real. The walls between us didn't vanish. They were carefully dismantled, piece by piece. Catherine didn't treat me like a fragile wound anymore. She talked to me like I was her own, steady, warm, with patience that had no expiration. Austin never stopped being my shadow. But now, I let him walk beside me. My dad and I. We started becoming something new, something more honest. Not just two people surviving loss, but two people rebuilding something together. The house stopped feeling divided. The air changed. Lighter. More forgiving. There were dinners we all stayed for. Movies we all watched through the credits. Weekends that looked like real weekends, messy, loud, full of life. I started visiting my mom again. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Dad. I'd sit by her grave and tell her about the little things, the way Austin hated broccoli, how Catherine laughed when she burned the toast, how the house sounded when everyone was asleep. And I felt, for the first time, that she wasn't gone from us. She was just carried differently now. In memory. In spirit. In the way we loved. A new photo appeared on my desk. It wasn't just me and my parents anymore. This one had 4 of us, my dad, Catherine, Austin, and me. But it wasn't just the 4 of us. Catherine was pregnant again. And this time, I wasn't afraid. This time, I wasn't holding on to the past so tightly that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. This time, the new life growing inside her didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like an arrival. Like someone we'd been waiting for all along. And when I looked at that photo, I didn't see a replacement. I saw something whole. Something healed. Something true. A family.